My name is Ahmed. I turned 83 this winter. The doctor says my heart is holding on, which is a gentle way of saying it has grown tired. I suppose that happens to most things that live long enough.
A few weeks ago, my grandson helped me set up this little camera. He said people record their thoughts now, leave something behind. I didn't think much of it at first, but the house is very quiet these days, and sometimes when the evening stretches too long, words start gathering in my chest. So tonight I thought I would speak them out loud. Not because I think anyone needs them, just because they've been sitting with me for a long time. When you reach my age, time begins to look different. When I was younger, years felt wide and forgiving. If something went wrong, there was always another season, another attempt, another conversation that could happen later. Later was a comfortable word. I used it often. I'll visit later. I'll say it later. I'll fix things later. For most of my life, later felt almost endless. Now I sit here in a chair beside a window that looks out on a narrow street, and sometimes I realize later quietly disappeared somewhere along the way. No one tells you when that happens. It just does. I spent 42 years working in the same office, a small accounting firm on the second floor of an old building downtown, the kind of place where the carpet never quite loses the smell of dust and coffee. Every morning I left the house before the sun was fully awake. My wife, Samina, would already be in the kitchen. She liked the quiet of early mornings. I would hear the spoon touching the side of a cup, that soft, familiar sound. We didn't talk very much during those mornings, not because we were angry, just because there was always time. I remember one particular morning, strange how the mind keeps certain days. She asked if I could come home earlier that evening. Her sister was visiting. She had cooked something special. I told her I'd try, but the truth is, I didn't try very hard. There was always one more file on the desk, one more number that needed checking, one more small responsibility that felt urgent in that moment. I arrived home late. The food was cold. Her sister had already left. Samina had fallen asleep in the living room with the television humming quietly. I remember standing there for a moment, watching her, and I thought, tomorrow I'll come home earlier. Tomorrow felt like a promise that would always wait for me. Years have a strange way of stacking on top of one another. At first they move slowly. Then one day you look back and realize entire decades passed while you were busy with things that felt very important at the time. Arguments that no one remembers now, worries that turned out to mean nothing, little competitions with people whose names I barely recall. I remember once being upset with a colleague for nearly 3 months. 3 months of silence over a mistake in a report. 3 months of walking past each other in the hallway like strangers. I can't even remember what the mistake was anymore, only the silence. At the time it felt heavy, necessary even. Now it just feels small. My son stopped visiting for a while when he was younger. We had an argument. I was convinced I was right, the kind of stubborn certainty that seems reasonable when you're standing inside it. I told myself he would understand eventually. Time would smooth things over. That's what I believed. Months passed, then a year. One evening I saw him by accident at a market. He looked older somehow, like life had moved forward without asking my permission. We stood there for a moment between two shelves of canned food. Neither of us knew how to begin the conversation, so we didn't. We nodded politely and walked away. It took another 2 years before we spoke properly again. 2 years. At my age, 2 years now feels like something enormous. Back then, it felt like nothing. There are small moments that return to me often these days. Not the big achievements, not the promotions or the money or the things I once believed proved I was doing life correctly. Those memories sit very quietly now. The ones that come back are different. I remember the afternoon my daughter asked if I could help her practice a school play. I told her I was busy. I remember Samina sitting by the window during a storm, wanting to talk about something that was worrying her. I told her I was tired. I remember thinking these moments could simply wait. Life would offer them again later. That was the quiet assumption behind so many of my choices. Later would come. But time is a strange companion. It doesn't argue with you. It doesn't warn you when something important is quietly slipping past. It simply keeps walking. And one day you find yourself sitting in a quiet room, remembering things that cannot be returned to. Not because anyone took them away, but because you thought they would still be there tomorrow. I didn't notice the change when it began, not really. It happened slowly, the way most important things do. Samina started moving a little slower around the house. At first it was small things. She would pause halfway up the stairs. She forgot where she left her glasses more often. We laughed about it. Aging felt like a distant concept back then, something that belonged to other people. One evening she sat down beside me and said she had been feeling tired lately. Not ordinary tired, a deeper kind. I remember nodding while looking at the television. I told her we would make an appointment with the doctor soon. Soon. Another one of those words that sounds harmless when you say it. The appointment happened months later. By then, the doctor's voice had changed. The room felt different. I won't describe everything that followed. Some memories feel too private to lay out in full sentences. But I will say this. Hospitals have a very particular kind of silence at night. Machines humming, footsteps in distant hallways, and a person you love lying beside you, breathing slowly. That's when time begins to look very honest. All the things that once seemed urgent shrink into something very small. There were many nights like that, sitting in a plastic chair beside her bed, thinking about ordinary mornings in the kitchen, thinking about the times she had asked me to come home earlier, thinking about the many small moments I believed could wait. It's strange what the mind chooses to hold on to, not the years, just the moments. I remember one night she woke up and looked at me for a long time. She smiled, a quiet, tired smile, and she said something simple. She said, "You always thought there was more time." She didn't say it with anger, just with a kind of soft understanding. That sentence stayed with me. It still does. I suppose that's when certain realizations begin to form. Not like a lesson, not like a speech someone gives you, more like a slow weight settling somewhere inside your chest. You start seeing your life differently. The things you once defended so fiercely begin to look unnecessary. The hours you spent worrying, competing, proving yourself start to feel like shadows. But by the time you see it clearly, much of life has already passed. I sit by this same window most evenings now. The street outside hasn't changed very much. Children still run past the gate after school. Vendors still shout about fruit and vegetables. Life continues moving with the same steady rhythm. And sometimes I watch it all and think about how much of my own time was spent holding on to things that never really mattered. Holding grudges, trying to win arguments, trying to appear strong, important, correct. All of it felt necessary back then. Now it feels like noise. There are other memories too, quieter ones that come late at night when the house is sleeping. Moments when I realize how long I waited to say certain things until the moment had already passed. And some words, once missed, never really find their way back. I'll pause here for a moment. Some memories take a little longer to walk through. If you're still sitting with me, I'll continue. There are a few more things that only started making sense when most of my life was already behind me. And strangely, they were never the things